we have Adrian Dymarczyk with us from IKON Windows and Doors. A big thank you to IKON Windows and Doors for being a champion sponsor of Passive House Accelerator. Also, a big thank you to you all for being here today. I'm going to play the role of Q&A concierge. My name is Zach Semke. I'm director of Passive House Accelerator. And so as questions occur to you during this presentation, please type them into chat and we'll be tracking those. And when it comes time for the Q&A discussion after Adrian's presentation, we'll invite people to unmute themselves and ask their questions directly of Adrian. So Adrian has always been immersed in the world of manufacturing. Growing up in a family that owned and operated a CNC manufacturing shop in California, he became experienced at producing high-precision parts for aerospace and semiconductors. In 1995, his family expanded their business ventures by establishing a window manufacturing factory in Poland, setting the stage for Adrian's journey in the window industry. In 2005, Adrian embarked on his entrepreneurial path by founding his first window company. He rebranded the company in 2017, establishing IKON Windows. Building upon that foundation, IKON Windows entered the realm of passive homes in 2017 with the support of the experts with FenTrend. Since then, Adrian and his team at IKON Windows have remained actively engaged in the community, contributing to the growth and advancement of superior high-performance fenestration solutions. So with that, Adrian, please take it away.
So today we're going to have a short but sweet presentation, pretty much just comparing our window and door material options, going through our various frames, how they're made, the components of each frame, and what you can use these frames for. Not all of our windows are made for passive homes, but I included them anyway, just in case you may be building a higher performance home that may not need those passive house numbers. So what are my options? We get asked that all the time. We do have uPVC windows, aluminum, wood with aluminum cladding, as well as thermally broken steel. So right off the bat, you could all assume that thermally broken steel will not be your high performance option. For our uPVC frames, we do have two frames to choose from, the Optima, the Optima Plus. The biggest difference between the two frames are the number of chambers. So in uPVC windows, what we like to do is to increase the performance of the window. We will be increasing the number of chambers inside the frame. The more chambers we have, the deeper the profile, the higher the performance. The other thing that the wider multi-chambered frame gives us is the ability to add multiple gaskets. So if you look between the Optima and the Optima Plus will have an additional gasket in the middle. It's actually a little hard to tell on the PowerPoint, but there would be an additional gasket right in the middle for additional air tightness. We can also use thicker and larger IGU packets. So in the Optima Plus, which was perfect for passive house, your IGUs can go up to 2 1/4 inches. What I like to consider this window is our workhorse. It is the best price to performance ratio. So least expensive, highest performing for the price. Now, how is it made? If you look to your right, the IGU is clearly labeled as number 1. This will be the only slide where I point out the IGU because it will be the same through every single window profile. Now, the uPVC windows, we don't silicone the IGUs into the frame. Everything is a dry system, meaning we have an EPDM gasket on the exterior and the interior side. The walls of our uPVC are 3 millimeters thick. This would be considered a Class A profile. There's a few classes of uPVC profiles, Class A being the highest. That will give us the thickest, sturdiest frame. Now, inside the frame, since uPVC is a little bit flexible and is vulnerable to extreme temperature changes, we do have to reinforce the uPVC frames. How do we do that? We reinforce it with either steel reinforcement, composite reinforcements, or a combination of two. So these will usually go in the frame itself and in the sash. Depending on the size of the window, depending on what type of project it is, those thicknesses will change. So if we're doing a multi-story, 11-story building, for example, we would have thicker steel to meet the requirements of the design pressure and air tightness. And then going further, the multi-chambers, as I pointed out previously, those will vary between the two options, but the way we count the chambers is vertically, up and down. So if you count from left to right, we're going to see we have 7 chambers. Even though on the right side, you may see a little bit more than one, that one column is considered one chamber. The uPVC windows also have a glazing bead from the inside, meaning all the windows that we produce in uPVC and the doors that we produce in uPVC will all be glazed from the interior side of the home, which is great because if you have a 2-story, 3-story building, the glass breaks, shatters, or we have to replace it for a warranty reason, we can do that all from the inside of the building. And number 7 points out to the gaskets. In this Optima Plus profile, we do have 3. One on the inside, one in the middle, and one on the outside. Moving on to our aluminum frames. So these are our 4 most standard aluminum frames. We do offer additional ones, but I don't want to bore you with every single aluminum frame that we have. So these are the basic ones that we manufacture. The Alu 7, Alu 8, Alu Passive, and the Alu Steel look. So the main difference between the top 3, Alu 7, Alu 8, and Alu Passive, is actually quite similar to all the other windows you're going to see. The deeper the profile, the higher performing the windows the window is. So basically what we do to increase the performance of aluminum windows is we increase the width of the polyamide strip in between the exterior and interior extrusion. Looking at the Alu 7, I don't think you could quite see how it looks, but the Alu 7 has a pretty standard thermal break. Just one piece of polyamide strip across, and the wider we get, the more things we add to that polyamide strip to add to that performance. So you'll see a polyamide strip that is multi-chambered. It is wider, it is thicker, and that actually increases the performance of our windows. Similar to the uPVC windows, the wider the profile, the thicker the glass pack we can use. So for high performance buildings, we typically like to stick with the Alu 8 and the Alu Passive profile because they will usually hit the overall U value that we're looking for. The Alu 8 works great on larger units because the overall U value would then have a more favorable U value for passive home, versus the Alu Passive, which is actually a certified passive component. And that will work pretty much on any size window. If for some reason the window is too small and we're not quite hitting what we need to hit on very cold climates, we do have aerogel inserts and additional foam inserts for the Alu 8 and the Alu Passive. Now the Alu Steel look window, that was mainly meant, it wasn't meant to be a performance window, it was meant to be an aesthetic window. It's quite hard to mimic steel windows. However, this was Europe's best shot at how they would do that. It's a very beveled exterior profile. It's a different look. It's a sleek look. It will still perform rather well compared to a standard American window. It is wide, so you can add that triple pane IGU. So just like the uPVC windows, aluminum windows will only have EPDM gaskets. There's no silicone around the IGU unless we're doing an acoustic profile, which means that the exterior and interior gaskets will still be EPDM, but the IGU is siliconed into the frame to add additional acoustic performance. The glazing bead is also on the interior, just as it is on the uPVC, allows us to replace the IGUs from the inside of the home. And then when you look at, did I do that correct? I did. Number 4. So number 4 is our polyamide strip. This shows our Alu Passive frame. So you can see the middle of the frame is our polyamide thermal break, multi-chambered. Depending on the performance required or what you're looking for, that thermal break will change. And in those chambers in position 4, you can see this is where we would insert a foam or aerogel insulation. There's also a few more pockets in the actual extrusion where we can include this aerogel insulation, but it's not shown just because we actually never have to go that far. I think in the past 7 years, I may have done one project that it's aerogel pretty much throughout the entire frame, but I don't think it was necessary. I think the client just wanted to brag that he had the highest performing window on the market. Moving on to our wooden frames. Pura and Pura Plus, same as those. The frame depth will determine the performance value of these windows. The full wood windows, they do come in multiple species of wood. Pine being standard. We have Meranti, oak, sapelli, teak, a few exotic woods. Those woods will raise the price of the unit. And this is the only window where we have to silicone the IGU into place. It does not have a snap-in glazing bead like all our other systems. So unfortunately, this one will be using a little bit of silicone. The glazing bead's still on the inside, but it's usually nailed to the frame, which creates a problem. If you do break something, we usually send you glass along with a additional glazing bead, because we've seen the companies that replace it tend to break the glazing bead. So you'll receive an additional IGU as well as a glazing bead. And the IGU depths on the Pura Plus are slightly smaller than all the other frames. Being a higher performance frame, we can only go up to a 2-inch IGU, which is still sufficient for most our regions. And as I mentioned before, you'll see the silicone interior, exterior. The full the full wood windows, they do come with drip caps on the outside. So the problem with full wood is, of course, maybe not a problem, but there's more maintenance involved. To limit the amount of maintenance, we put a drip cap on any edge that may have water sitting on it or snow sitting on it, etc. These caps come in either aluminum, which I would prefer. We also do have wooden drip caps. The wooden drip caps do get damaged. However, it's much easier to replace a wooden drip cap than refinish your window. Your glazing bead will still be on the inside, just nailed to the frame. And then your gaskets are also in the middle. On the Pura and the Pura Plus system, doesn't matter which width, you still have 3 gaskets. Now, the wood clad. The wood clad is pretty much similar or identical almost to the wood frame, except we had cladding to the outside. But because we had cladding, it allows us to have just a little bit more IGU space, with the Clad Plus going up to a 2.25 inch IGU. Similar concept applies. The wider the frame, the higher the performance. And with the Clad Plus, we can go up to a quad pane IGU. Also not necessary, but if you want to have some bragging rights that you have 4 panes in your sash, by all means, we can do that. These are dry glazed, so no need for silicone. The exterior cladding on the sash is actually what acts as our glazing bead. So on all the other windows, we'll have a glazing bead on the inside that you pop out, replace your IGU. On the clad windows, however, that exterior cladding will be your glazing bead. So the way to replace an IGU, you have to open your window. I prefer to take the sash out of the frame, place it down on the floor, on the table, take the cladding off, then replace the IGU, and then replace the cladding on top of it. On the clad windows that are fixed, they do have a nail-in glazing bead, but the upper windows do not. So the exterior cladding will act as the glazing bead. Now these windows are a little different when it comes to drainage, because we don't really have weep holes. A standard window, a standard Clad Plus window, your weep system will actually be between the cladding and the wood. It's going to be right here in the middle. So we never want to actually cover up this side. We do have an option to put in weep holes on the face of the cladding. Again, it's not standard. So typically somebody from our team would ask you how you want the window to weep. And I think I do. It's a little heavy, but you would have a standard weep hole on the outside, which means that if you wanted to finish off your window higher, you can, and the window would just weep from here. If you don't do that, then the bottom of the window would be exposed, giving that big, hunky, bulky feel that some people do not want. However, if you don't mind, then you have 2 options to choose from. Here are some of our, actually all of our but one cladding options. There's one cladding option that is missing from here, which is our linear line. Not linear line. I forget which one, but it's not here, so it's not really important. Our most popular lines are usually something that's a little bit more sharp, aesthetically pleasing, modern. So the quadrat FV is typically what we see is asked for. And on the bottom right, you will also see our passive frame. So this passive frame, it's a clad plus frame. It's our highest performing frame. It has an additional foam insulation that's attached to the wood between the cladding and the wood, giving us the highest performing wood clad frame out there, which can also have the quad pane IGU. And I clicked something. Now, the steel frames, I'm not really going to go over because steel is steel. We have to thermally break it. The steel performance is not great. However, the steel windows that we have been producing, they do have a decent thermal break in them. So if you're looking for U values in the 20s, low 20s, high 20s, we do have steel frames that can meet that. However, the condensation ratio is still not favorable. So if you're looking for a high performance build, the steel frame may need to have a little bit more tweaking to it. The benefit of steel is it's very hard to mimic the aesthetic of steel. And if somebody really wants steel, that's what these are for, with the better thermal breaks. They can do triple IGU, so that's how we're able to achieve that U value in the low 20s. So some of the window operations that we have would include a tilt and turn window, which is dual action. The window will both open in and tilt in, fixed window. We have a double hung simulated window. So for landmark buildings, we created this window a few years ago. Now it seems like many other manufacturers have this as well, but it will be a tilt and turn window on the bottom, a fixed window on top, and it will mimic a hung window. We manufacture outswing casements, hoppers, awnings, as well as facade systems. Indoors, we'll have the standard folding door system, entry doors, glass doors, lift and slides, and pivot doors. Now the main difference between an entry door and a glass door, you may be wondering, is why would I put two pictures for a door that looks pretty much the same? Well, an entry door is usually a heavier set door. It's actually hinged, has door hinges, has a lever on both sides. And for example, in our wood profiles, we can CNC any type of design that you'd like to see on that door. We can remake historical doors. If you're working on a landmark project, let's say in Brooklyn, and you have to have a passive house door to look exactly like the door that was there, we're able to do that on the entry door systems. Now, a glass door, we put an IGU in the frame, of course, but a glass door can also be made on a window system. So the frames would be window frames. You'd still have a low threshold. And we'd put an IGU in the sash pocket, just like a regular window. And there's two ways we also manufacture glass doors, is a tilt and turn glass door and a glass door that you can open and close from both sides. So a balcony door or a tilt and turn door will have a handle only on the inside. So just envision a giant tilt and turn window with an aluminum threshold. That's what a balcony door is. But if you'd like to, and this door is going to be used only for let's say the back of the house, or it's not the main entry door, we can have a lever on both sides. Then we have your lift and slide systems and your pivot doors. All right. Now, I wanted to put this together in a way that makes sense of which materials can have what. However, this was the best thing that I could come up with. So if somebody wants the PowerPoint afterwards, I could send you over this page so you know exactly which material does what. But aside from a few of the windows, pretty much all the materials we have can be made in any of those operations. The double hung simulated, right now we only have that in wood, mainly because landmarks requires those windows to be full wood. We're working on a wood clad version, but at the moment it's just not a pressing matter, so we haven't really got to it. The outswing casements, those can be in wood, wood clad, aluminum, or steel. We do not make an outswing casement in uPVC. Facade systems, also aluminum, wood clad, and steel. We do not make them in full wood, nor do we make them in uPVC. And going down the line, awning windows, aluminum and steel, and folding doors, aluminum, steel, and wood clad. And the pivot doors, aluminum and steel. Every other type of operation you could have in any of the materials we provide. There may be some restrictions depending on the operation or what it is. For example, a lift and slide door in uPVC, it has a height restriction that is shorter than a aluminum or steel lift and slide door. Off the top of my head, I don't remember exactly, it's 8 foot something versus a aluminum door, which we can go up to 13 feet on some models. And on the steel door, we can go above 13 feet in height. So even though some of these materials you'll be able to make every single operation, there may be some restrictions with height restrictions, weight restrictions, etc. So a little quick pro and con of every single frame. Now it seems like uPVC will have the most cons. Just came out that way. I couldn't think of anything else for the pros, but it is the best price to performance ratio product. If you're looking for a budget friendly window that performs to passive house standards, it's very hard to beat uPVC on pricing. It can achieve passive house performance with the Optima Plus. It is low maintenance and great durability. So again, this is a great budget friendly window frame. If you're also doing, let's say, a rental building, commercial building where you don't want to worry about maintenance, or again, if it's a rental building, it's a great frame to achieve that passive house performance. We actually did a senior center. It's like 60 apartments, I believe, in Hatfield, Pennsylvania, which was a certified building. And that all used the Optima Plus frame. Now the cons, limited color options. So I didn't actually quite know if I should put this on here, but I did because even though I wrote limited, we're not really limited to colors. We do have a lot of different colors. If you want a gray, there's a gray. If you want a black, there's a black. We just cannot get different shades. Like we don't have like 4 different blacks like we have in aluminum. We have one black. We have one dark gray, one light gray. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, but you may be limited to exact shades of colors. It is non-biodegradable, unfortunately. They are recyclable, but the frames that we use do not use a lot of recycled material. So I put that as a cons list. It is vulnerable to extreme temperature changes. Depending on the color that we choose on the window, if it was a black on black window with a gray interior core, we may see twisting or expansion of the frame. That is another reason that we choose the inner reinforcements correctly. So it's just a little bit more finicky in extreme temperatures. Not necessarily a bad thing if we build it correctly, but it's something to keep in mind. It is a bulkier frame, so a lot of people may not like the fact that it is quite a massive frame on the outside. It does not have favorable sight lines, and it does have more size restrictions than any other frame that we have, whether it's operable windows, fixed windows, lift and slide doors. You'll have greater size restrictions. For the majority of homes, we've seen that it works, but if you're looking for a 13 by 10 foot fixed window, you may need to go with something else other than uPVC. Now, pros and cons of aluminum. Aesthetics. I have aesthetics on both sides because for some, of course, it's all personal preference. However, a lot of our clients like the modern look, the sharp lines, the thinner profiles. But we also get another side of the spectrum where we hear that the aluminum is more commercially and doesn't feel as warm or welcoming as some of our other frames. So I threw aesthetics on there for pros and cons, and personal preference will put you onto one side or another. Aluminum does give us the option to do very expansive sizes in both windows and doors. Depending on the window profile, of course, the Alu7 will not have the same size options as the Alu8 or Alu Passive, only because the Alu Passive having a little bit more meat behind it is also a little bit more structural, but you can easily make an 8 foot tall by 4.5 foot wide operable window in one sash with the Alu Passive. It covers all the operations for windows and doors. It has endless color options. We use the RAL color booklet. Anything in the RAL color booklet you can use to paint these windows, powder coat these windows, and they also have an anodized option. We don't do a lot of anodized. We have that option too, but blacks and grays are typically standard. And of course, it has high performance possibilities. With the Alu Passive, with the aerogel inserts, we can achieve very, very low U values. The cons, aesthetics, we covered. So just because we can achieve higher performance, that also leads to a slightly higher price. Aerogel is not cheap. The thermal brakes that we use are not cheap as well. So The higher the performance of an aluminum window, typically tends to have a higher price. And also, it is harder to repair gashes, dents, etc. We haven't really seen this on small residential projects, but if you're doing a commercial projects where you have a lot of subs coming in, people walking around with hammers, now looking where they're swinging the hammer. If you get a dent in the aluminum, it's harder to fix. If you get a deep gash in aluminum, it's also harder to fix than, let's say, uPVC, where we can fill it in, paint it over. Same thing with wood, fill it in, paint it over. Pros and cons of wood. So aesthetics. Aesthetics should also be on both sides. Also depends what you want, but if you're looking for that warmer feel, that wood feel, you can't really beat wood, but it does end up having bulkier frames, which can lead to wider sight lines. The wood profiles have multiple color and stain options. If you're looking to stain wood, I would stay away from pine. Pines are a great entry-level window that we have. When I mean entry-level, just least expensive out of the wood species. However, I do not recommend staining it. The most I would do is a whitewash finish, but any other stains, I feel they come out a little blotchy. They don't soak in as well. If you're looking to stain a wood, Moranti would be the best next option, or the best entry-level option for staining. Wood is also a great natural insulator. We don't have to do many things other than increase the amount of wood that's on the frame to increase the performance. It is easily refinished. On the full wood windows, if the color bores you after 7 years, you can refinish it, paint it a new color, and you can keep doing that for 100 years, and the window should, with proper maintenance, last you that 100 years. And wood being structural, it also gives us the option to do expansive sizes. Now, the pros and cons of the wood clad, pretty much exactly the same as the full wood, except you have the exterior cladding, which gives us that low exterior maintenance feature. These do come in multiple finishes as well, powder coated. We have textured finishes. We have a wood look-alike grain finish as well on the cladding. So options on the cladding are endless. Plus, you have the different cladding options that I showed you in the previous slides. Now, it is more expensive than full wood just because we do have to add that aluminum to it, and the bulky frames and sidelines are the same. Whether it's full wood or wood clad, you'll still have those same sightlines. If you have a large window, those sightlines tend to hide. But if you have very small windows, then they are very noticeable. Depending how you trim out the window, you may end up with unfavorable sightlines. Now, pros and cons of steel. Aesthetics, very hard to beat. Steel aesthetics, if someone's going for that steel look, we can fabricate massive sizes in steel. 16-foot tall pivot doors, anything that's ginormous, impossible to move, we'll just throw a motor on top of it. So that's one big plus. And of course, you can pretty much do any type of window or door operation in steel. The cons, of course, it's a horrible performing material. Even with the thermal break, it still doesn't get us close to passive house numbers. And there's a high price tag to pay. So not really recommended for high performance building. And it is the most expensive profile out of all of them. And to put everything into perspective on performance, because I think that's why we're all here, I put together this little graph. I have red to green. I wasn't sure what to do in the middle because a U value or U frame value of 0.2 may be good in some climates and not so good in other climates. However, this is to give you a general idea of what you'd be working with depending on the frame profile. So on the very right side, closest to a U value, the frame U value, not the whole window U value, we have Alu Passive Aero Plus, which is an aerogel infilled Alu Passive window, and our Clad Plus Passive. That is our Clad Plus with the extra foam. So those frame U values are as low as 0.12 and 125, and everything from there keeps getting higher. So you'll see our Alu Passive, Alu 8, we're still in the green. And then the Clad Plus and Optima Plus, this is kind of where I consider the end of the passive house frames. So we're already at that U factor of 0.17. Our condensation ratio is still pretty much where it should be. Anything to the left of that may be used in a passive home, maybe in a warmer climate, but not in the Northeast. And the Vulcan line, which is a thermally broken steel, we don't even really have to ask about that because those are beyond horrible. So it's not even on the chart. It's all the way to the left. And I believe that is it. Thank you everyone for listening.
Fantastic. Thank you, Adrian. Really appreciate that. Lots of great info packed into 30 minutes there. And we've got a great crowd of about, 134 people with some excellent questions. So let's dive straight into those. First up is John Snell. John, can you unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yes, thanks for your presentation. The casement windows, it looks like they don't come in uPVC. Is that true?
And that's correct. We don't have a uPVC casement window. We used to manufacture what I would call a Swedish window. It would rotate. However, the performance on those windows weren't favorable and it was quite expensive. So we stopped manufacturing those.
So if you want a window that opens fully like a casement, is I guess the tilt and turn is probably the closest thing you have or only thing?
For outswing casements, you would be limited to a wood clad, or an aluminum. But the thing is, if you're looking at performance values, the outswing casement actually does not perform as well as the inswing. It's a slightly different profile that I didn't throw in on the presentation, but it is, it's not a high performance window. Let's just put it that way. We put all our eggs into our basket. Like everything that we do would be on the tilt and turn system because we know that we can have the greatest air tightness. It is a multi-locking system versus the casement, which is not necessarily multi-locking. So even though we do manufacture them, we don't necessarily manufacture them for high performance.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Great, thanks, John. Next up, we have Adrian Winotto.
Yeah, hi. We were just curious what how you see dynamic glass fitting into either your business or the passive house space broadly.
And when you mean dynamic glass, do you mean the glass that changes from clear to privacy, or what do you have in mind exactly with dynamic glass?
Yeah, whether it's electrochromic or other types of technology.
Mm-hmm. So we currently offer that in our quoting software. We're actually working on a project in Brooklyn where they like to have that glass. How do I see it fitting in? I think it really just depends on the clientele because it does add to the cost of the windows. We haven't had a lot of inquiries about it. I like the idea of it. I think it's great. And we can incorporate it into our window frames. That's pretty much all I know. But I haven't sold a single project like that in the US yet.
Adrian, I do know that the new tower, the Curve, that's going up in Vancouver, BC, which is a high-end passive house condominium tower, will be using dynamic glass.
That's right. We've heard that.
Yeah. Cool. So next up is Jim White.
My question with the uPVC product, do you have long-term test results on the performance of this product regarding UV degradation resistance and or loss of plasticizers?
Mm-hmm. Good question. So we use a foil made by Renalite. That Renalite foil, I believe they have testing up to 25 years. So Renalite is all tested in Europe. I can receive those reports if you'd like to see exactly, but they are tested up to 25 years for that exact reason. So they should last you those 25 years without fading or losing the performance of that foil. On a regular non-foiled uPVC window, it's also tested up to 25 years. So after 25 years, I don't know how it would look or react or perform, but up to 25 years, you're solid.
All right. Thanks, Jim. Appreciate it. Next is Greg Duncan.
Hi, how are you?
Greg.
My question was just about getting the PHPP values. Is that do you have a link to that, or is it on a case-by-case basis?
So yes, we do not have our profiles in any of, other than the Alu Passive. We don't have them in any of the databases. We have flexo and thermal modeling on most of the frames that we use for high performance buildings. So if you'd like, I can send those over to you. They'll have all the PHPP required info on that sheet. And then I could just email that to you. So if you'd like to shoot me an email at Adrian@IKON Windows, I'll forward that over to you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. Chris, you're up next. I think maybe this was answered, but perhaps you have some follow-up questions to it. Okay, it looks like Chris has left the meeting. So Chris's question was, are all offered Windows tilt turn, or are there other operating options? And I think you went through those already, so we're probably good. So next is Tapani Talo.
Oh, just a quick question about the quad. What's the U value on that one?
The quad pane, just the IGU, or with inside of a Windows system?
Whether inside is a Windows system.
So that will all depend on the overall size of the window. But in the alu passive with the aerogel and the quad, when I ran a thermal report one time, it was 0.1 or a little less than 0.1 for the overall system. It's not, again, something really crazy that we may not need, but it's possible.
All right, let's move on to Mario Di Soli. I don't hear from you. I'll ask it for you. Okay, so the question was, where is that aerogel in your windows?
Where is it? Good question. Very good question. So the aerogel will have to fit into some type of chamber, and the best chamber to fit it into is actually in the chambers in the thermal break. So this is one type of alu passive frame. We do have ones that are a little deeper or wider, which allows us to put in more, but we slide it into a chamber either in the polyamide strip or another chamber that we have available in the window frame.
Awesome. Thanks, Adrian. Our next question is from John Bleasby.
Hi, I hope you can hear me.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Nod?
Mhm.
Yeah. Adrian, I just wonder if you have any data on embodied carbon throughout your lineup. Any comments or data that you might share with us?
I do not. That is something that I have to look into, but I do not.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. Next up is Jarrett Davis.
Hey, thanks, Zach. Adrian,
Yeah.
great presentation. Thank you. Questions for you on, you mentioned two questions, I guess. You mentioned to be able to make a door out of your window frame. What design pressure could you take that up to if you did that as far as water flow? And then the second question would be, do you have any 203 testing as far as missile impact for storm ratings?
So let's start with the DP question. I do not have a exact answer for that, but I know that if our Alu 7 frame, so our entry-level aluminum frame, when we did regular DP testing, we went up to about 120, 130 on the window. I assume it will be less than that with the aluminum threshold, but I don't think it's going to be much less, just because we still have the multi-lock system all the way around the sash, including in the aluminum threshold. If this would be required for a project, like a specific project, we would just have to test that setup. As far as hurricane testing, we're looking at testing some of our products, the Alu 7 and Alu 8. In the meantime, we've actually just been manufacturing on the Rainier's profile. So we buy the extrusions from Rainier's just because they already have the testing required, and our machines are set up and tooled also for Rainier's. So if it's a project that you want to use Rainier's on, we can do that. But the IKON line, we don't have any hurricane testing yet.
Okay, great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Next up is Shannon Pendleton.
Zach. Hi, Adrian. Great presentation. And I don't know if you remember me, but a long time ago, you brought a window to Green Building United in Philly. And it was it was absolutely gorgeous. And you did a fantastic job showing a huge group of people how it worked, what went into the design and the performance, and still appreciate it. Loving having your stuff on Source 2050 to share with everybody that comes our way. And I'm curious, are you going to make a pivot window that hinges on the sides? Any plans for that?
we actually have one in aluminum.
Oh,
So
fantastic.
we have a pivoting window that pivots on the side jambs, and we have a pivoting window that pivots horizontally as well.
Fantastic. Thanks, Adrian.
You got it.
All right, next up is John Snell.
I think you already answered my question. Thank you.
Great, thanks, John. All right. Looks like we have a couple more, yeah, Kim? Okay, great. So Andrew Gregory is our next question. Andrew, can you unmute yourself and ask? If not, I can ask it for you. The question is, does IKON sell in the Canadian market, and what are current lead times to East-West Coast?
So we have done one project in Pemberton. That was an apartment building back in 2016, 17. However, from that time on, we have not sold in the Canadian market, mainly because we do not have NAFS, I believe it's called NAFS testing. So we have NFRC testing. I'm not sure if Canadian building code would accept NFRC. So we don't mind selling in the Canadian market. We would just have to do the testing for it. So depending on the size of the project, we'd be more than happy to test the window and door profiles that you need. Current lead times are as follows. Production time for everything other than steel is about 6 to 8 weeks. And then on top of that, we throw in a 4-week lead time for transport. For the West Coast, we put another 2-week buffer on top of that. So if you're on the West Coast of the US or Canada, it would be 12 to 14 weeks. If you're on the East Coast, most likely you'll be getting your windows in that 12-week range from the date of signed shop drawings.
Great. Thanks, Adrian. All right. So the next name I see many times on our events, and I realize that I don't know how to pronounce your first name. It's either Ha-Ho or Ha-Yo, or so my apologies, but Mr. or Ms. H. Meyer, please ask your question.
Yeah, it's Ha-Yo. Like
Great. Thanks, Ha-Yo. Sorry about that.
That's right. Yeah, just checking out the website, Adrian, and I didn't see the passive, what was it called? The clad passive and the alu passive with the arrow, I think. And I was just kind of wondering if those are new products and they still have to make it to the website.
No, we haven't added it onto the website. A little bit because it's one of those products that I have in our catalogs. I don't have it on the website, but I know it's a little dumb when I say this, but when I have things like that on the website, people start asking for it specifically, even though they may not need it. So I like to go over some of the decisions with the clients before actually presenting that to them. The alu passive with the extra foam, I haven't had the need to actually use that window in the Northeast market, even though with our climate, the Clad Plus performs just, sufficiently enough. And the alu passive with the aerogel, it raises the price so much of the frame that it becomes just ridiculous. Again, it's one of those things that I usually don't recommend because it will perform fine without the aerogel inserts.
Right, so you've got to talk to you.
Yeah, and again, it's just one of my little things. I may be wrong. Maybe I should put everything on the website. It looks great on a picture, and it's just something that the alu clad passive I may have sold a handful of times in the past few years, and it's usually on a project where the windows are very small and they'll have a mix of windows. So they have Clad Plus on all the regular size, bigger windows, and then the Clad Plus passive on the very small windows where they just could not get that U value where it needed to be. But from the outside, both of them look the same.
Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Ha-Yo. Appreciate it. Next is Selena Barton. Looks like maybe Selena has left the call. So Selena's question is, do you offer retrofit solutions or services to upgrade existing windows instead of replacing them entirely? What methods do you use to salvage and reuse components from existing windows? And are there specific recycling programs or partnerships you participate in ensure responsible disposal and recycling of window components. So there's a theme here.
Yeah. So that would probably be a question more for certified installers. We personally do not do that. We just focus on the manufacturing and supply of windows. We don't do any of the installation or retrofit ourselves.
Got it. Cool. Thanks, Adrian. So the next question is from Keith Green. Keith, are you here?
I am, yeah.
Great.
I've heard some talk. First of all, Adrian, thank you for the presentation. There's a lot of detail to think of, and you've obviously done a lot of studies on various materials. So my question is that, I've seen some of the fur-filleted woods used now in cladding and decking, and it's quite a bit stronger than other species, even though it's pine that's been treated. And it's been treated in a way that is sustainable. So I'm wondering if, given the strength of treated pine in that way, if you've considered, or any other manufacturers have considered using it to strengthen your offerings in the wood, even if they're clad, if that offers you any, greater sizes or different profiles or anything. Just curious.
So I haven't thought about it until about 2 seconds ago. That's actually a very good thing that I should probably look into. The pine, if it's strengthened, I think that would be a good option to have if it doesn't actually raise prices too much. But I definitely look into it.
I know producers are limited right now, and I think what they're growing, even for distribution in the United States, is currently in New Zealand. And I think it goes to Europe before it gets here. So
it has to make its way around the world.
Well, I think Kebony in particular is looking in the Northwest for forests and for American soil to grow this on. But I wondered if anybody was considering it yet, given the enhanced strength for window applications. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll consider it now, because that's actually very interesting.
Great. Thanks, Keith. Next is Corey Wauk.
Hey, thanks for the presentation. So my question to you was with regard to your window products. Do you have a table or listing of gateway performance requirements that AMA 101 typically, notes relative to performance class, minimum performance grade, air, water filtration, etc.?
I do have some AMA testing certificates I could send you. I don't have anything on our website. I could send that to you along with our NFRC testing. So you could see both of those mainly for the aluminum. For the wood clad profiles, I won't have AMA, but I'll have the NFRC.
Okay. And do your performance, does your products, does the performance class go up to AW, or do they all include AW, or is it a range between R and CW?
So if you look at the AMA profile of the AMA testing, it will show an AW rating, but that same test done for NFRC will go to CW just because the test requirements are different. So if I'm doing like NFRC 400 or whatever it is, they just won't test beyond the certain design pressure. So all the products that I have can be AW, and if I don't have a AMA test for it, like for example, on our entry-level uPVC window, I probably don't have anything, but I have a European test equivalent that I know that it can reach the AW. I would just have to retest it here in Intertech or NCTL to actually give you a American test.
Got it. Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Corey. All right, we have a follow-up question from Adrian Winoto, and I think this is our last question. So this is your final chance. If you have a burning question that you want to pose, please do so now. With that, Adrian, please ask away.
Yeah, just a quick question about the corner construction on the uPVC windows. Are they heat or ultrasonically welded or glued? And why was that particular method chosen?
So all our uPVC are welded together. We have right now we just transitioned switched our machines to that slim line welding. Why was it chosen? It's a good question. I don't know. I think it was because when we were buying out the machine park, it was just one of those things that came in a set, and everyone welds, or most manufacturers out of Poland will weld their frames for the uPVC. On the aluminum, we do crimp. We have the option to weld, and on the wood clad, the cladding can be crimped or welded. But as far as the uPVC, they're all welded.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Adrian. Mario has another question. Mario, are you available to come and ask, or do you want me to ask it? Silence will be a indication that you'd like me to ask it. All right, so Mario asks, regarding environment protection, what do you do with old windows you replace?
So if it's one of my certified installers that's on the job and they're ripping out aluminum windows, most likely that aluminum is going to make it to a recycling center. If it's installers or a GC that we don't work with, or we just deliver the windows to a job site, most of the time we don't know what's going on with old windows. And we also deal a lot with new construction. So with new construction, we don't have to worry about that. But it really depends on the project. If it's one of our installers, we try to get rid of it or recycle them. But if it's somebody that we don't know, we actually don't know what goes on with old windows.
Great, thanks, Adrian. That brings us to the end of the questions here. So I want to give a big thank you to everyone for joining us today for this special Passive House Component Spotlight with IKON Windows and Doors. Also, Adrian, thank you for a tremendous presentation and great Q&A conversation, and for IKON's support of Passive House Accelerator. And I hope that everyone has a great Thursday and great rest of your week. We've got a lot of fun programming coming up in the next couple of weeks, so we hope that you'll join us next time. And until then, be well. See you later.